This is Jacob's Algebra, Chapter 13, Lesson 6, Part 2, on completing the square. So in the Part 1 video, sorry I didn't mean to have that part showing. On the Part 1 video, we worked through problem number 6, Part A. We had the equation x squared plus 6x equals 40, and Part A asked for you to solve the equation by writing it in standard form, which is what we did right here. We converted it to standard form, and then factoring it. So we converted it to standard form by getting a 0 on the right side and our polynomial on the left, and then we factored it, and then we used the zero product property to set each factor equal to 0. Let me get rid of this mark I just made on here. Okay, so now what Part B wants us to do is to use the square root method. I'm sorry, use completing the square and then take the square root. So what we have is x squared, I'm sorry, my writing is not really working here. Let me try that again. X squared plus 6x equals 40. And the first thing we need to do is complete the square. So I'm going to draw my parentheses. The square root of x squared is an x. And now we take our second term, 6x, we divide it by 2 to get 3x. Then we divide it by our first term here. 3x divided by x is just a 3. And this is positive, so this must be positive also. Now we multiply this out. X, when we square the x, we get x squared. When we do the double of x times 3, that's 6x. And then we need to square our 3, and that's 9. Now you'll notice that we added 9 here, so that means we have to add 9 to the other side. So this is 40 plus 9. So that means that x plus 3, when we square it, must be 49, because that's what 40 plus 9 is. Now we can take the square root of both sides. And on the left side, we're going to have x plus 3. On the right side, the square root of 49 is 7. And remember that we always have to put a plus or minus in front of that, because we were squaring the x plus 3. And so we don't know whether x plus 3 is positive or negative, because once you square it, it's always going to be positive. So we have to work this for both the positive and negative values of 7. Now, plus or minus 7 is what x plus 3 is. We need to find out what is just x. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So x will equal negative 3 plus or minus 7. So now we need to find out what these two values actually are. So our x is going to equal negative 3 minus 7 is a negative 10, and negative 3 plus 7 is a 4. So our two answers are negative 10 and 4. And notice that what we had before was negative 10 and 4. You should get the same answer either way. So this was number 6, Part B. It's just like number 13 that I assigned for homework. Now let's look at number 7. Number 7 uses the equation x squared minus 10x equals 36. And for Part A, it says to solve it by completing the square. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and leave a space down here, and I'm going to write the parentheses and put a square up there. So our first term in the parentheses is going to be the square root of this. The square root of x squared is just an x. Now to get our second term in the parentheses, we take our middle term, which is negative 10x, we divide it by 2, which is negative 5x. Then we divide it by the first term in the parentheses. Negative 5x divided by x is negative 5. Now we multiply this out to make sure that we start off with the same values that we have up above. When we square the x, we get x squared. Now we need to write 2 times x times negative 5, and that's going to be a negative 10x. That matches, so that's good. And now we add our final term. Negative 5, when we square it, is a positive 25. Now we didn't have that 25 before, so we're going to copy the 36 and add 25 on the right side, because whatever we do on the left side, we have to do on the right side also. So now what is 36 plus 25? That's 61. Okay, to solve this now, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to do the square root on both sides. On the left side, the square root of x minus 5 that's been squared is just x minus 5. On the right side, what we're going to get is plus or minus square root of 61. We can't really simplify that. There is no square factor of 61. So now we need to solve for just x. To do that, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So we'll end up with x is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 61. So that's our answer for part A. Part B says express your answers in decimal form correct to the nearest hundredth. So you need to punch into your calculator 5 plus square root 61. And what you'll get for that is 12.81. And then you need to punch in 5 minus square root 61. And for that one, you will get negative 2.81. So for part B, those are your two answers. Now part C says to substitute these two answers back into your original equation. I actually crossed off part C for you to do. So you do not need to do part C on the homework problem number 14 that is just like this. But I did include the example of how that works out in the sample problems that I sent you, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how that works. So if we want to test out 12.81, we're going to plug that back into our original equation. So it starts off with x squared, so that's going to be 12.81 squared. And then we have minus 10 times x, so minus 10 times 12.81. And when you punch that into a calculator, what you're going to get is 35.996. Well, we're supposed to get 36, and that's pretty close. If we round it to the nearest hundredth, we will actually have 36. Now we can test it out for negative 2.81. Negative 2.81 squared minus 10 times negative 2.81. Notice it's negative of a negative, so that makes that change to a positive. And when you put that in a calculator, you also get 35.996. So you can see that both of these values are reasonable values because they both give you an answer that approximates to what we're supposed to have. You won't get the exact answer because 61 is a radical. So now we're going to look at problem number 8. So problem number 8 is just like problem number 15 that I assigned for homework. So it starts off as x squared minus 2x minus 4 equals 0. And part A says to graph the function y equals x squared minus 2x minus 4. Now remember, anytime you're told to graph a function, what you need to do is come up with x and y values. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. I'm going to make an xy table. And so here's our x, and then our y will be x squared minus 2x minus 4. So when x equals negative 2, we have negative 2 squared minus 2 times negative 2 minus 4. Remember, negative 2 times negative 2 is going to make that a positive. And so when we calculate this out, negative 2 squared is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. Minus 4, we're going to get 4 for our answer. Then we try it for negative 1. Negative 1 squared, minus 2 times negative 1 minus 4. This negative and that negative cancel to become a positive. And what we end up with is negative 1. For 0, we get 0 squared minus 2 times 0 minus 4, which is going to be negative 4. When we plug in 1, we have 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 4, and that's going to be a negative 5. And then I'm just going to put up a couple more values here without actually calculating them out. If your x is 2, when you plug that in, you will get negative 4. If your x is 3, when you plug that in, you'll get negative 1. And if your x is 4, then when you plug that in, you will get 4. So then for part B, so for part A, then after you make your data table, you need to actually graph the function. So this is what the graph of the function looks like. You can see we have the point negative 2, 4. So that's right here. Here's negative 2, 4. And then we need the point negative 1, negative 1. So here's negative 1, negative 1. 0, negative 4. So here's 0, negative 4. And then we need 1, negative 5, 2, negative 4, 3, negative 1, and 4, 4. So then part B of number 8 says, between what integers are the solutions of x squared minus 2x minus 4 equals 0? Remember, to find that, you need to find where the graph crosses the x-axis. And it just said between what integers, so you don't have to have an exact value. So where does this cross the x-axis? Well, it's between negative 2 and negative 1. Where is it crossing the x-axis here? That's between 3 and 4. So the two places where it crosses the x-axis are between negative 2 and negative 1 and between 3 and 4. So when we go through and actually calculate our values should be between those ranges. So now I'm going to open up a new page and we're going to look at number 8, part C, which says to solve the equation by completing the square. So let me rewrite the equation, x squared minus 2x minus 4 equals 0. Remember, to complete the square, we want only our x terms on the left side. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and we'll have x squared minus 2x equals 4. Now I need to write the parentheses, and I need to put my first term in here, which is going to be the square root of my first term. The square root of x squared is x. Now I take my second term, I divide it by 2. Negative 2x divided by 2 is just x, is just negative x. And now I divide it by x to get negative 1. So what is x minus 1 when we square it? X, when we square it, is x squared. 2 times x times negative 1 is negative 2x. Well, that matches so far, so that's good. And then negative 1 when we square it is just a 1. So x squared minus 2x plus 1 has to equal the 4 that we started with. And then we added this 1, so I have to add it on the right side also. So that means that x minus 1 when we square it has to be equal to 5. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. And when we do that, we get x minus 1 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5. Now to find out what just x is, we need to add 1 to both sides. So x will equal 1 plus or minus the square root of 5. And then we can, I did cross off part D because I didn't think that was absolutely necessary, but you can plug this into your calculator to see that 1 plus square root of 5 is 3.24. And 1 minus square root of 5 is negative 1.24. And when I pull up my graph again, you should see we have where we cross the x-axis here, that's about 3.24. And where we cross the x-axis over here, that's about negative 1.24. So that was number 8, which is just like number 15 that I assigned for homework. So now let's look at number 9. Number 9 says solve each of the following quadratic equations by completing the square. So let's look at part C, which is x squared plus 18x and then equals negative 81. So I'm just going to draw my parentheses down here. The square root of x squared is just an x. I take my 18x and divide it by 2 to get 9x. Now I divide it by x to get 9. So now I'm going to square it. X, when we square it, is x squared. 2 times x times 9, that's 18x. And then we square 9 to get 81. We added 81 on the left side. That means we need to add 81 on the right side. Negative 81 plus 81 is 0. So now we take the square root of both sides. The square root of our left side is just x plus 9. On our right side, we have just 0, and we don't have to write plus or minus for 0 because 0 is neither positive nor negative. Now, to solve for x, we need to subtract 9 from both sides, so x is equal to negative 9. So for number 9, part C, the answer is negative 9. Now on the part 3 video, I'm going to work through a couple of more parts from number 9 and a couple of parts from number 10. Remember that this number 9 is just like number 16 that I assigned for homework, and I'll be doing more in the part 3 video.